He saved a helpless creature. Then it transformed into a stunning alien girl.
Ronan Vale yanked the control stick, sending his small ship, the Starwind, into a sharp dive. A pirate warship loomed behind him, its plasma cannons glowing bright red. Come on, just a little farther," he muttered, sweat dripping down his face. His ship rattled as another blast whizzed past. His target was a wrecked battleship floating in the middle of a debris field. Scanners showed no life signs. Perfect. He could hide there if he survived long enough to reach it. With one final burst of speed, the Starwind slipped into the wreckage. The pirate ship hesitated. It wasn't worth the risk of crashing into floating debris. "Idiots," Ronan chuckled, cutting his thrusters. The silence that followed was almost peaceful. He took a deep breath. Time to find something valuable before the pirates circled back. Slipping on his oxygen mask, he stepped into the dark, lifeless ship. Twisted metal lined the hallways, flickering lights barely illuminating the destruction. Bodies of alien soldiers, long gone cold, floated in zero gravity. He ignored them. He'd seen worse. Then something moved. Ronan froze. His pulse quickened. Scanners had shown no life. But there, at the end of the corridor, a small, trembling shape clung to the floor. It was curled up, covered in deep wounds, and barely breathing. A strange, dark exoskeleton wrapped around its thin form, almost insect-like, but with a humanoid shape. A survivor. He should leave. This wasn't his problem. But when the creature shifted slightly, its glowing violet eyes locked onto his. They were pleading. "Ah, hell," Ronan groaned. He moved fast. Whatever it was, it wouldn't last long. He scooped it up carefully, surprised by how light it was. It let out a weak, rattling breath before going limp in his arms. Ronan carried it back to the Starwind, securing the doors as alarms blared. Pirates were returning. He dropped into the pilot's seat and fired the engines. The pirates tried to block him, but he twisted the ship in a sharp roll, barely squeezing through the wreck's jagged remains. Within moments, he punched into hyperspace, leaving them behind. Only then did he glance at his unexpected passenger. It lay motionless on the floor, breathing faintly. Ronan sighed. What the hell did I just bring on board? Hours later, the creature stirred. Ronan had patched its wounds as best he could. Its exoskeleton had softened, revealing dark sapphire blue skin underneath. He had never seen anything like it. Then, right before his eyes, the creature began to change. The exoskeleton cracked apart, shattering like glass. The thin body stretched, muscles forming beneath the smooth skin. Two delicate antennae receded, leaving behind sharp, regal features. Within seconds, where the fragile creature had been, now lay a tall, breathtakingly beautiful alien woman. Her violet eyes snapped open. Ronan barely had time to react before she lunged forward, pinning him against the wall with inhuman speed. He gasped. She was strong, stronger than anyone he had ever fought. She studied his face for a long moment, then tilted her head. "You are Ronan?" she asked, her voice smooth yet strangely commanding. He swallowed. "Yeah." Her expression softened, but only slightly. "Then by the laws of my people, I am bound to you," she said firmly. "You saved me. My life is now yours." Ronan blinked. "Wait. What?" Ronan stared at the alien woman in front of him. She had just said something completely insane. What do you mean? Your life is mine," he asked, cautiously stepping back. The woman held his gaze, her violet eyes intense. She stood tall, her sapphire blue skin smooth and unmarked now that the strange exoskeleton had fallen away. Her long, midnight black hair cascaded down her back, giving her a wild but regal look. "You saved me," she said simply. "I am Stavira, last warrior of the Tsarek. My people's law is clear. When a warrior's life is spared, they become bound to their savior. My existence now belongs to you." Ronan blinked. "That sounds like a bad deal for you." Stavira frowned, tilting her head. "Do you refuse my bond?" "Yes, absolutely." He waved his hands. "No offense, but I don't need an alien warrior following me around." Her frown deepened. "You misunderstand. It is not a choice." She stepped closer, and instinctively, Ronan reached for his blaster. He wasn't sure if she meant harm, but he didn't like the way she moved. Too smooth, too fast, like a predator. She noticed and smirked. "You are afraid." "No, I just like knowing when someone might punch me." "I will not harm you," she said. "You are my mate now." Ronan nearly choked. "Excuse me." It's a virus sighed as if speaking to a child. To the Tsarek, life debt is the same as a marriage bond. Your fate and mine are now one. Ronan ran a hand down his face. Of course, the first time he saved someone, he accidentally got space married. He exhaled. "Okay, let's fix this. How do I, unmarry you?" His Elvira's expression darkened. "Breaking a bond is dishonorable. Among my people, such an act demands a duel to the death." Ronan groaned. "Great, fantastic. So I either stay married to you or fight you." "Yes. And if I fight you, I die." Her smirk returned, without question. Ronan shut his eyes for a long moment. He was so tired. "Fine," he muttered. "You can stay. But no calling me mate or husband or whatever. Got it?" Elvira studied him, then nodded. "Agreed. For now." Ronan sighed. He had no idea what he had just signed up for. A few hours later, Ronan sat in the cockpit, running diagnostics on the Starwind. His ship had taken damage from the pirate attack, and he needed to make repairs before his next job. Behind him, Elvira stood with arms crossed, silently watching. "Do you need something?" Ronan asked without turning. "I am observing." "Observing what?" "You. As my bondmate, I must learn your ways." Ronan groaned. "I told you, I'm not your bondmate." Elvira ignored him. "You are strange for a warrior." "I'm not a warrior." "You fight, you survive. You use trickery to win. That is a warrior." Ronan shook his head. "There's a difference between fighting and being a warrior. I don't live for battle." Elvira looked at him as if he had spoken nonsense. "Then what do you live for?" Ronan hesitated. That was a good question, one he didn't have an answer for. "Right now, I live to keep my ship running and my head attached." Elvira was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "That is not living. That is surviving." Ronan glanced at her. For the first time, her voice held something different, something almost sad. Before he could respond, an alarm blared. His scanners picked up a pirate signal approaching fast. Ronan swore. "Looks like we've got company." Elvira grinned, her violet eyes flashing with excitement. She reached for the blade strapped to her side. "Finally," she said. "A proper challenge." Ronan's fingers flew across the controls as the pirate ship closed in. Red warning lights flashed inside the Starwind. Shields were weak. Weapons were low on power. This was not a fight he wanted. "Great," he muttered. "I barely escaped these guys, and now they're back for round 2. Elvira stood beside him, her violet eyes locked on the approaching enemy. Unlike Ronan, she looked thrilled. "They come for battle," she said. "Good." Ronan shot her a look. "Not good. Very, very bad." She tilted her head. "Are you afraid?" "Yes, I don't have the firepower for this." Elvira scoffed. "Then we take their ship." Ronan blinked. "What?" She nodded, as if this was the most obvious thing in the world. "Board them. Kill their leader. The rest will surrender." Ronan stared at her. "That is the dumbest." A blast shook the ship, cutting him off. The pirates had locked on with a tractor beam. "Okay, new plan." He sighed. "We're getting boarded." Elvira smirked. "Good. Saves us the trouble." The boarding party. The ship shuddered as the pirates forced their way in. Ronan grabbed his blaster and pressed against the wall near the airlock. Across from him, Elvira crouched low, her muscles tensed like a predator ready to strike. The door burst open. 5 heavily armed pirates stormed inside, weapons raised. "Hands up," their leader barked. Ronan slowly lifted his blaster. Then, in a blur, Elvira exploded into motion. She lunged at the nearest pirate, grabbed his rifle, and twisted hard. The weapon snapped in half. She spun, elbowing another pirate in the face. His helmet cracked, and he dropped like a stone. The remaining 3 opened fire. Ronan dove behind a crate, returning fire with quick, precise shots. He wasn't a warrior, but he knew how to survive. His shots forced them to scatter, giving HFY the opening she needed. She grabbed one pirate by the throat and lifted him off the ground. With a casual flick, she tossed him into the wall. He crumpled instantly. The last 2 hesitated. HFY grinned. They ran. Ronan exhaled. Well, that worked. HFY turned to him, eyes shining. You fight well. Ronan holstered his blaster. You fight like a damn monster. She took that as a compliment. The bigger problem. Before they could catch their breath, a deep voice crackled over the ship's speakers. Well, 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 looks like the little scavenger put up a fight. Ronan groaned. He recognized that voice. Jorak, a pirate warlord, and one of the nastiest criminals in this sector. I know you're listening, Vale. Jorak continued. That was cute, but my men were just the warm-up. You either hand over your ship and your little alien friend, or I'll blow you out of the sky. HFY growled. Let him try. Ronan wasn't as confident. He glanced at the console. A dozen enemy ships surrounded them. They couldn't fight that many. He took a breath. All right, Jorak, let's talk. HFY's eyes snapped to him. You would surrender. Not exactly, Ronan muttered. He turned the comm back on. Jorak, buddy, let's not do anything crazy. I've got something valuable on board. Maybe we can make a deal. There was a pause, then a low chuckle. I'm listening. Ronan cut the comm and turned to HFY. Buy me 5 minutes, he whispered. She studied him, then nodded. Make it fast. Ronan grinned. Time for some trickery. Ronan leaned over the control panel, his mind racing. He had 5 minutes before Jorak decided to turn the Starwind into space dust. That meant he had one chance to outsmart a pirate warlord. No pressure. HFY stood nearby, her posture rigid, her sharp violet eyes locked on him. You have a plan, she said. It wasn't a question. Ronan smirked. I always have a plan. Some of them even work. She didn't seem impressed. He flipped a few switches, dimming the ship's lights and rerouting power to the engines. He needed the Starwind to look crippled, but still have enough juice for a quick escape. Jorak's voice crackled over the comm. Time's ticking. Vale, what's your offer? Ronan pressed the transmit button. All right, Jorak, listen. You want something valuable, right? A low chuckle. That's right. Well, lucky you. I just picked up the last surviving warrior of the Tsarek. He shot a look at HFY, and you know what they say about Tsarek warriors. There was a pause. Then Jorak's voice turned serious. Go on. Ronan smirked. Hooked him. Tsarek warriors have a priceless biocore, he said. An organic power source stronger than any reactor, worth a fortune, if you know how to extract it. HFY snapped her head toward him, her eyes narrowing dangerously. You would sell me, she hissed. Ronan kept talking. I'll hand her over, no fight, but you know how these warriors are. She won't go quietly. You'll need to board my ship yourself. Jorak laughed. You expect me to walk into a trap? Ronan sighed. Come on, Jorak, look at your scanners. My ship is barely holding together. If I was planning a fight, wouldn't I be running by now? Silence. Then, you've got guts, Vale. All right, I'll come aboard. The transmission cut off. HFY rounded on Ronan, fury in her gaze. You dare. Relax, he interrupted. I'm not actually selling you. She scowled. Then explain. Now. Ronan grinned. Jorak's paranoid. He won't bring his full crew. He'll come with just enough men to feel safe, but not enough to risk a betrayal. That's when we take him out. HFY crossed her arms. Your trickery is reckless. Maybe, he winked, but it works. She stared at him for a moment. Then, to his surprise, she smirked. Very well, trickster, she said. Let us see if your gamble pays off. The pirate warlord arrives. Minutes later, the ship shuddered as Jorak's personal shuttle docked. Ronan stood by the airlock, HFY at his side, her muscles coiled like a predator ready to strike. The door slid open. Jorak stepped through, flanked by 4 heavily armed guards. He was a massive, scared brute of a man, with sharp yellow eyes and cybernetic arms that hummed with power. His armor was thick, his movements confident. "Vale," he rumbled. "Where's my prize?" Ronan gestured toward HFY, "Right here." Jorek's eyes gleamed, beautiful and dangerous. He turned to his men. "Secure her." The moment they moved, HFY exploded into action. She snatched a blade from one of the guards, spun, and slashed with blinding speed. The man barely had time to react before he crumpled to the ground. Jorak roared in anger. "Kill them." Raman ducked and fired, his blaster shot hitting another guard square in the chest. The remaining 2 opened fire, but HFY was too fast. She leaped, dodging effortlessly, then drove her stolen blade into the next pirate's side. One left. Jorak himself. He didn't look scared. He grinned. "Not bad," he said, rolling his shoulders. "Now, let's see how you handle me." Then, his cybernetic arms charged with energy, and he lunged at them like a beast. Jorak lunged, his cybernetic arms crackling with energy as he swung at HFY. She dodged, barely. The metal fist slammed into the wall, leaving a deep dent. Ronan fired his blaster, aiming for Jorak's exposed side. No effect. The energy shield built into his armor flared, absorbing the shot. Jorak turned his sharp yellow eyes toward Ronan. "Nice try." Then he charged. Ronan dived out of the way just in time. Jorak's massive form crashed through a stack of supply crates, splintering them like paper. HFY took the opening. She leaped onto Jorak's back, wrapping her legs around his torso and slamming her elbow into his head. He grunted but didn't go down. Instead, he reached back, grabbed her arm, and threw her off like she weighed nothing. HFY flipped midair, landing on her feet. Her violet eyes gleamed with something dangerous. She was enjoying this. Roman groaned. Of course she likes fighting the giant murder robot. Jorak cracked his neck. "You're strong," he said to HFY. "A real warrior, but I've crushed Sarek before." HFY smirked. "Then you faced weaklings." She darted forward, faster than before. Jorak swung, but she slid under his punch, slashing her blade across the joints of his cybernetic arm. Sparks flew. Jorak snarled, his movements now slightly slower. Ronan saw the opening. Time to be useful. He reached for his belt, pulled out a small EMP grenade, and tossed it toward Jorak's feet. The warlord barely had time to react before. VZZT. The grenade detonated, sending a pulse of energy through the room. Jorak's cybernetics shorted out, his arms sparking wildly. HFY wasted no time. She lunged, driving her knee into his face. Jorak staggered. HFY grabbed Ronan's blaster from the floor, aimed it at Jorak's exposed jaw, and fired. One shot. Jorak's eyes widened in shock. He fell backward with a loud thud. Silence. Ronan exhaled. Is he dead? HFY kicked Jorak's motionless body, hard. He didn't move. She nodded. Now he is. Ronan let out a breath of relief. Good, because if he got back up after all that, I was just gonna run. HFY tossed the blaster back to him. You fought well, trickster. He smirked. You're just saying that because I saved your life again. HFY crossed her arms. You only weakened him. I finished the fight. Yeah, Ronan muttered. Details. Suddenly, the ship's alarm blared. A new danger. Ronan checked the console. Jorak's fleet was moving in. They know he's down, Ronan said. They'll blast us out of the sky. HFY frowned. Then we take their ship. Ronan gave her a look. You say that way too often. She smirked. Because it works. He sighed. She wasn't wrong. But this time, he had a different plan. Ronan opened the comm to the pirate fleet. He deepened his voice, mimicking Jorak's tone. This is Jorak, he growled. The Sarek is mine. Stand down. Silence. Then, a hesitant voice responded. Boss, you sure? Of course I'm sure. You idiot. Ronan snapped. You think you can question me? The pirate hesitated. Then, no, boss. Understood. Ronan grinned. He cut the transmission and turned to HFY. See, he said smugly, sometimes trickery beats brute force. HFY chuckled. For the first time, she actually looked impressed. Perhaps, she admitted, you may not be a warrior, but you are clever. Ronan smirked. Dan right. Tavira stepped closer, studying him. I underestimated you, Ronan Vale. He raised an eyebrow. That almost sounds like a compliment. Tavira tilted her head. Perhaps it is. Before Ronan could respond, she reached out and placed a hand on his chest. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't a challenge. It was something else. Something that made Ronan's heart skip a beat. Tavira held his gaze. You have earned my respect, trickster. Ronan swallowed. Thanks. Tavira smirked. Then she stepped back. The battle is won, she said. Now let us claim our prize. Ronan sighed, shaking his head. This woman was going to be the death of him. And maybe he didn't mind. Ronan sprinted down the narrow corridor of the Starwind, his mind racing. The pirate fleet hadn't opened fire yet, but that wouldn't last long. His trick had bought them seconds, maybe a minute, before someone got suspicious. Tavira kept pace beside him, her movements swift and controlled. What's your plan now, trickster? Something crazy, Ronan admitted. But I need you to trust me. Tavira smirked. I trusted you once. You lived. That is a good sign. Ronan hoped she still felt that way after this next stunt. They reached the cockpit, and he slid into the pilot's seat. The screen showed the pirate flagship just ahead, a massive vessel bristling with weapons. If they could take it, they could escape the system. Tavira studied the controls. How do we get aboard without being blasted apart? Ronan cracked his knuckles. By doing something incredibly stupid. She nodded. Good. I was worried you would suggest something sensible. Ronan grinned and pushed the engines to full throttle. The Starwind lurched forward, heading straight for the pirate flagship. The comm crackled to life. Boss, what are you doing? Ronan deepened his voice again, mimicking Jorak. I'm coming aboard. Fool, open the hangar bay. There was a pause. Then, yes, boss. Opening now. Ronan exhaled in relief. They actually fell for it. Tavira looked impressed. Your tongue is as sharp as a blade. He winked. That's why I'm still alive. As the hangar doors slid open, Ronan pulled the ship into a sharp dive, slipping past the force field just as the bay sealed shut behind them. They were inside. Tavira unbuckled her seatbelt, already moving. Now we take the bridge. Ronan sighed. Yeah, that part's all you. Tavira smirked. Try to keep up, trickster. Storming the flagship. The moment they stepped off the ship, alarms blared. The pirates had realized something was wrong. Guards poured into the hangar, weapons raised. Tavira moved like lightning. She snatched a rifle from the nearest pirate, swung it like a staff, and sent him crashing into the floor. Then she fired. 3 quick shots, taking down the next wave. Ronan fired too, aiming for knees and weapons. He wasn't a killer, but he wasn't about to get shot either. A pirate lunged at him with a blade. Ronan ducked, twisted, and slammed the butt of his blaster into the man's gut. Yeah, no thanks. Tavira flipped over a barricade, cutting down the last pirate with a clean strike. Silence. Ronan looked around at the unconscious or groaning bodies. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Tavira smirked. It is far too late for that. Ronan sighed. Yeah, I figured. They hurried toward the bridge, taking the lift up to the command deck. The doors hissed open, and a dozen armed pirates stood waiting. At their center, a tall, battle-scarred woman with golden eyes smirked at them. Captain Saris. Jorak is dead, she said, tilting her head, which means I'm in charge now. Tavira tensed. We can settle this with battle. Saris chuckled. You think I'll duel you for leadership? I prefer simpler solutions. She snapped her fingers. The pirates raised their weapons. Helpless moved instantly, grabbing Ronan and pulling him behind cover as a barrage of blaster fire filled the air. Ronan swore, "You know, just once, I'd like a plan to go smoothly." Helpless tossed him a look. "Then you should stop making plans." Ronan rolled his eyes, not helping. Cyrus called out, "Give up now, and I might let you live." Helpless's eyes burned. "I do not surrender." Ronan gritted his teeth. They were outnumbered, outgunned, but he had one last trick. He tapped a button on his wristband, activating a hidden command on the Starwind. Outside, the ship's engines roared to life, then overloaded. A shockwave blasted through the hangar, shaking the flagship. Lights flickered, alarms screamed. Ronan grinned. "That's our cue." Before Cyrus could react, HFY vaulted over cover, her blade flashing. Ronan followed, blaster in hand. They had one shot at this, and he wasn't about to let them lose. The flagship trembled as the shockwave from the Starwind's engine overload rocked the ship. Sparks rained from the ceiling, alarms screamed, and the pirates hesitated, just for a second. HFY didn't. She launched herself toward Captain Cyrus like a blazing comet. Her blade cut through the air, forcing Cyrus to leap back, barely dodging in time. The pirate captain growled, "You're fast." HFY smirked, "You're slow." Cyrus snarled and attacked. Two warriors, two blades, moving too fast for the eye to follow. Ronan, meanwhile, had his own problems. The remaining pirates opened fire, forcing him to dive behind a control console. Energy bolts slammed into the metal, scorching it black. Ronan peeked out and fired 3 quick shots, taking down 2 of them. Another pirate charged, swinging a heavy baton. Ronan sidestepped, grabbed the pirate's arm, and used his momentum to throw him straight into the nearest wall. The pirate collapsed in a heap. Ronan winced. That looked like it hurt. HFY and Cyrus were still locked in battle, their blades clashing in a storm of steel and sparks. Cyrus was skilled, her movements sharp and relentless. But HFY was faster, stronger, and fueled by something deeper. Ronan saw it in her eyes. This wasn't just a fight. This was proving herself. Cyrus lunged, but HFY sidestepped and slammed her elbow into Cyrus's ribs. The pirate captain gasped, staggering back. HFY didn't hesitate. She knocked Cyrus's blade away and drove her foot into the captain's chest, sending her crashing to the floor. Cyrus groaned, gripping her side. "Damn, Sarek." HFY pressed her blade to Cyrus's throat. "Yield." Cyrus glared at her. Then, slowly, she let out a bitter laugh. "You fight well." "I know," HFY said simply. Ronan approached, blaster still raised. "So what's it gonna be, Captain? You surrender, or do we toss you out the airlock?" Cyrus sighed. "You're annoying." "Also true," Ronan said. Cyrus glanced at the remaining pirates. Most were either unconscious or unwilling to fight anymore. She let out a long breath. "Fine, the ship is yours." Ronan blinked. "Wait, really?" HFY narrowed her eyes. "You surrendered too easily." Cyrus smirked. "I know when I've lost. Besides," she sat up, rubbing her bruised ribs. "Leading a fleet is a headache. Maybe it's time for a new career." HFY considered her words, then slowly lowered her blade. Ronan turned to the remaining pirates. "All right, listen up. You've got 2 choices. Stay and work under Captain HFY or leave and find another warlord to follow. Either way, we're taking this ship." The pirates exchanged uneasy glances. Then, one by one, they dropped their weapons. HFY frowned. "I do not need a crew." Ronan grinned. "Yeah, well, congratulations, Captain. You just got one." She shot him a look. "I did not agree to this." "Too bad," Ronan said. "Now let's get out of here before someone bigger and meaner shows up." HFY sighed, but didn't argue. She turned to Cyrus. "You will not cause trouble." Cyrus smirked. "Not today." HFY studied her for a moment before nodding. "Then stay out of my way." Cyrus chuckled. "With pleasure, Captain." Ronan clapped his hands. "Great! Now let's fly this thing." Exavira tilted her head. You know how to pilot a warship. Ronan hesitated. Ah, how hard can it be? Exavira groaned. We are doomed. He smirked. Relax. I'll figure it out. Exavira crossed her arms, studying him. Then, to his surprise, she smiled. Very well, trickster. Let us see what you can do. Ronan felt something warm in his chest. Maybe, just maybe, he was starting to belong here. And for the first time, that didn't seem so bad.